check your ego out the door, or check your ego in front of the door. Regardless if you check it before you enter or you let it out after you entered a situation, it is important for us to know at this period of our path that we can be consumed by ego. We can be consumed by it in a very subtle and really not obvious way. And we need to make sure that we are aware that this can happen, regardless how sincere and how good of a person we think about ourselves to be. But the point is, when we are making such changes in our lives and when we are achieving things that sometimes it felt unachievable and then things just start happening, what can happen very often to people is that their ego comes into play. They become cocky, as you say it, and they become what they are actually not in their deep down soul. Just because so many years it was so hard to attain something like this, you then relax and then you feel amazing, and this feeling of amazing allows ego to come back and do the havoc if you allow it to do. And using ego on this path, it's not forbidden, or how can I say, not allowed, but you need to be the master of it. You need to know when to use your ego and when not to use your ego. It is important to know that, because, as I say, otherwise it can do more problems to you than good things. And now, as you are making these steps forward and you're doing some exercise and you are walking this path, you are seeing first results. You are seeing first things that are happening and first, feelings of feeling good inside. And it's good to acknowledge those feelings and have them and nourish them and work on top of them. Just be aware all the time what's happening with your attitude towards other people, what's happening with how you talk, how you carry yourself, because it can happen very suddenly that ego takes over. And when it does, don't blame yourself. It's normal. Don't blame yourself, but just correct. If you see in certain room what is happening, imagine that you take your ego, open the door, put it outside the door and close the door and say, wait there, because I have to talk now from my truth. And even before you enter some rooms to have discussion, maybe you're doing interviews for the new job, just leave the ego outside to wait for you when you come back. Ego is very useful tool we can use in certain situations, but it can also be destructive. And when we say, and when we read articles about you need to get rid of your ego, you need to kill it, you need to do many things with the ego, what I think is you only need to recognize there is an ego, there is this part of you that it usually functions on things you're not aware of. It usually functions also from your shadow. And it is actually a great tool for you to see where there is still something to work on, where there is still opportunity for growth, for your personal advancement. And it's not so much important how you do with your ego, but it's important how you manage to correct mistakes when you do something that you recognize as not appropriate. It doesn't serve you to let your ego go out and be cocky and be different than you are. Sometimes it feels good, and maybe for an evening, but the point is that the people who know you will know what is happening, and it might feel unstable or non-reliant looking at you, that you become some other person just because you achieved something. Then they might think differently. But on the other hand, you know where you allow yourself to be that and where you're not allowing yourself to be that. Because sometimes it is also important that you allow yourself to be like that and see what people will do. So ego, again, it's a tool that you can use, but also be aware that it can damage. It can damage and it can hinder your path forward. So before you tackle this week's obligations and this week's goals, think about it and have this in mind. How you will talk with people, how you will behave, how you will handle yourself. This doesn't mean you cannot be happy. Of course you can be happy. And of course it's appropriate for you to express that you are happy and that you pure joy and all this. But it's different when you express it with the ego, when you think that you are the ruler of the world. And maybe you are. Then it's okay. And you can allow yourself to do whatever you can. Or maybe it is not. You are the one to decide. So, before you start the week, check your ego out the door or in front of the door and let me know what happens during the week. We are in touch.